let's talk about these quarterback landing rankings. Of course, we had Bryce Young to Carolina at first overall, C.J. Stroud to Houston at second overall, Anthony Richardson to Indy at fourth overall. Will Levis did not get drafted in the first round, but now he goes to the Tennessee Titans. And Hendon Hooker, as of right now, if I'm not mistaken, is
He's still out
still
there.
on. He's still on the board.
Yep, he's still out there.
Boom.
Let me double check. Yeah, last time I saw.
Joey Porter. So see, here's what I was saying too. I was like, watch Will Levis be the first pick in the second round, and he was the second pick
Yep.
in the second round. There goes my cousin Alan. We've got 4 quarterbacks now: Malik Willis, Ryan, Josh, and
Oh,
now
is Dobbs back? I thought Dobbs somewhere else. I thought he went somewhere else.
they got 4 quarterbacks. The Colts pick is in. We'll see who they're going with. The
I thought
Jet.
Joshua Dobbs went somewhere else. I thought he's a free or he signed somewhere
Of
else.
course, PJ Ojolari went right after the Saints. God, of course. Of course, of course, of course.
Could have had him.
The Falcons go offensive guard. Michael Mayer to Notre Dame or to the Raiders.
Vegas.
All right.
Vegas.
I like that Joey Porter pick though. We'll have some nice day two breakdowns as well. But like I mentioned, Bryce Young to the Cardinals, CJ Stroud to Houston, Anthony Richardson to Indy, Will Levis is a Titan, and Hendon Hooker will remain to be drafted. So let's start from the bottom with a guy that doesn't have the team yet. Hendon Hooker not being drafted as of right now. Where do you believe he should go? There's a few quarterback needy teams out there, but give me your thoughts.
First one comes to mind, Atlanta. I don't know if Desmond Ritter's the guy.
Mm,
Maybe you bring Hooker on to maybe raise his competition level up. I'm not saying that they should do that, but that's just my thought on that. Las Vegas, maybe you got Jimmy G. Obviously, they signed him to a deal, but we all know he can't stay healthy.
yeah.
New England in the market. I don't think it's going to
Yes.
work out with Mac Jones for sure. And Hooker, I think he can play. He can be that prototypical quarterback. Like he's not known to be a runner. He can make the throws. He's methodical. And then finally, lastly, Tampa Bay. I think those are the 4 teams now, minusing Tennessee now because they took Will Levis, but 4 teams now in this second round that might be in the on the market for a quarterback.
Yeah, I like all those, man. Falcons are one that is interesting. I don't know if they would move for Hooker, considering that
Right,
they just took Desmond Ritter last year and they did
right.
declare him as a starter, bringing in Taylor Heineke. But I'm with you on the terms of it being a possibility, considering how that's kind of one of the weaker spots on the team right now, considering how the Falcons are shaping out. Patriots, yes, I'm there with you as well. Mac Jones is not going to be the guy. I don't think I would see Hendon Hooker fitting there just because of the
No,
Bill Belichick type of play style, but
yeah,
it is a need for quarterback nonetheless. The Rams don't feel like a fit, but the Rams are a team, of course, that could
yeah.
use a
Forgot
quarterback. And
about them.
Matthew
Yeah,
Stafford is going to be coming off that injury that was pretty significant for him. The Raiders, I think, would be an interesting one as well. I actually mentioned the Raiders taking Hendon Hooker in one of my mock drafts early on. And then of course them he maybe even falling to the Commanders, which would be another team as well. You talk about Eric Bieniemy, I think that adds a lot of spice to the Commanders. You talk about Eric Bieniemy being there. Sam Howell, of course, was a quarterback that just went last year. I don't know
mhm,
if he's really going to be considered the guy, but he was just taken recently. You spent that money on him as a draft pick, so I always say if you're going to draft him, at least see what you can get out of them. The Seahawks, maybe because Hendon Hooker kind of does feel like a Geno Smith in a way. He can be
yeah,
athletic. The way Geno played last year, he can make the throws. He can read a defense decently. Hendon Hooker is somewhat of a statue, so if he does become a third, fourth, fifth round guy, unfortunately, I'm not shocked. But nonetheless, and then I think I mentioned the Bucks as well could be one.
yeah.
Baker Mayfield definitely doesn't feel like he's going to be the guy for the Bucks to be able to do anything. Yes, he is a former number 1 overall pick, but Baker Mayfield's been in the league for 5-6 years now. I think everybody understands what he's going to be. Now let's head back to the top. Bryce Young, of course, to the Carolina Panthers, number 1 overall. I think we were both in agreement of that
Yeah.
pick. Do you think Bryce is going to be enough to actually move the needle for Carolina? Um, Not even necessarily soon, but within the next 2 or 3 years, do you see Bryce Young kind of having that arrival like a Jalen Hurts, like a Josh Allen, like we're waiting for Justin Fields essentially in a way?
Um, maybe not like those guys. I think he can be efficient for them. He's going to a coach that's been kind of like a quarterback whisperer, I guess, in some form. Will he have that same impact like Josh Allen? Because Josh Allen wasn't great when he first came out of Wyoming. Obviously, he got progressively better. Justin Fields still, we don't know. We don't know. The jury's still out on him. But I think Bryce Young, what he does offer, you can't teach a lot of quarterbacks. He has everything. The only thing that we question is his size.
Yep.
That's really the only thing. So if he can stay healthy, then maybe he can put together a pretty solid career.
Yeah, I feel you on Bryce Young. The biggest thing is going to be if he can stay healthy, if the size isn't going to be a major thing because the best ability is availability. I really like the Bryce Young to Carolina pick. He just definitely felt the safest in the draft. He was a top pick for me. Adam Thielen being there. I hate that Christian McCaffrey still isn't there, but they bring in a Hayden Hurst. I know they've tried to bring in a few more players. They're going to
Yep.
make moves in this draft. They're going to continue to have things happen in the offseason to where people are saying that Carolina's coming to take the NFC South, and I don't believe that, not only because I'm a Saints fan, but just because of seeing how that team has been built over the last few years, understanding that, getting in Frank Reich was something that was necessary for them to happen, and then knowing that, just moving on from Matt Rule was tough. Moving on from Ron Rivera was tough. So it's kind of been a rough roll at the dice, and the team definitely didn't improve, unfortunately, under Matt Rule. I'm excited to see Bryce Young playing him twice a year, being in the NFC South as a fan. It's going to be a fun quarterback to evaluate, and I believe he can turn into that Jalen Hurts type of S quarterback, maybe that Patrick Mahomes S type of quarterback. Not being the biggest, but making the great throws, having the great arm, and just growing into that quarterback that everyone's seeing him to be. CJ Stroud to the Houston Texans. Kind of the same question here. Do you think he's going to be enough, considering the state of the Texans in a much worse state than the Panthers? Do you think it's going to be enough within the next 2-3 years where we're going to see an arrival of CJ Stroud? Do you feel like he gets any playing time in year one? And if you want to go back a little on Bryce for playing time as well, feel free.
No, no, you're good. No, honestly, I think Stroud, he can actually make a difference. I think a lot of people are not really feeling the Texans, and I get it. They have been abysmal for quite some time after Bill O'Brien gave away the whole organization. Before he got up out of there.
Yeah.
They've struggled. Obviously, you've had two back-to-back firing of coaches and Lovey Smith and what was the other guy? I forgot the other guy's name. He was there one year, like a cup of coffee, and he was out.
Yep.
You know, but I think now D'Amico Ryans is going to come. Look, the thing with D'Amico Ryans is that he's not just an ordinary defensive coordinator. He's coming from a very well-run organization in San Francisco, and I'm
Yep.
pretty sure he learned something from John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. I think and then if you look at their free agency, man, they brought some guys over on defense. Jimmy Ward's coming over there. I forgot the other linebacker that they got. I forgot. But on offense, you got Dalton Schultz, who I know Cowboys fans are probably like, well, whatever. He's
Yeah.
an efficient player.
Schultz is solid. He
He's a
just has to
solid
find the right
player.
way.
You got Damian Pierce, who had a really good rookie year at running back. They're going to play good defense, and they're going to limit the opportunities for Stroud to make mistakes. And
Right.
so, will they win a lot of games? Maybe not in the first year or so. But if you remember, the Texans lost a lot of close games last year. They were up on a lot of teams, including my Cowboys. The Cowboys had to force overtime with them. So I think Stroud moving forward, probably maybe not this year, but you give him another year or so, he could be in that realm of like a Josh Allen because he's got the size, he's got the ability. But like you said, the organization itself has to support him.
Right, definitely. And you look at some of those pieces you were mentioning, like a Damian Pierce, Robert Woods.
Yeah,
You've
Robert
got a
Woods.
John Mechie that was out of
John
Alabama. Of
Mechie's
course,
coming
you
back.
got a
God
John
bless him.
Schultz.
Yep.
Yep. Got a lot of respect for these players that are coming back. And I'm excited to see CJ Stroud in
Yeah,
Houston.
I'm
I
excited.
really am because, he was my favorite quarterback coming into the draft. I think his size and, just really his size overall was the edge that I really had for him over Bryce Young. But Bryce did do, I think, really just about everything
You
better
bet.
than CJ outside of the stature and everything, like I mentioned, because, you
Yep.
look at CJ Stroud through to Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and JSN. I mean, those are 4 first-round receivers. We're just going to wait for Marvin Harrison to maybe go top 10 next year,
Yeah.
considering how the draft is.
Marvin Harrison would be the number one wide receiver this year if he went out.
Oh,
Like
absolutely. Marvin
he's the
Harrison
best.
would come out. I mean, he would make every receiver this year, not look as good as him. And
Right.
clearly we know that. So CJ Stroud to Houston, he is now going to see a drop off in that talent. He is now going to be into an organization where it's a defensive head coach in D'Amico Ryans. And we've known that Ohio State hasn't made the best quarterbacks coming into the league. So that's going to be reservation for some people. That's going to be a lot of people wanting to steer away from CJ Stroud.
Right.
I think CJ Stroud has looked better than the Braxton Millers of the days and the Cardale Joneses and God rest his soul, Dwayne Haskins of the days. And, obviously not better than Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields is one of the better quarterbacks of recent memory to come out of Ohio State. And then now we're looking at CJ Stroud. So I'm very, very excited for what he's going to be. I love the competition now with CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson going to the same division
Yep.
and Will Levis going to the same
Oh
division as
yeah, you're
well.
right.
There we go. As
That's
quick as
that's
people want
gonna
to
be
call the AFC South and the NFC South being bad divisions, all it takes is a draft, a couple of free agency things to shake it up.
young quarterbacks in that division too.
Yep.
All, even
Yep.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yes, sir. You officially have probably the five. Well, no, let's think about it. Probably have four of the best. Out of the last 5 or 6 draft quarterbacks we've seen over the last few years, it's probably four of the best ones
Oh yeah.
just in that division.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Trevor
I
Lawrence,
agree. I
CJ
agree.
Stroud, Anthony Richardson. Of course, Richardson and Levis are going to be a little bit of a question. But let's talk about Anthony Richardson to Indianapolis. I think this is the biggest thing with him. Does he get any playing time year one? He's
Oh yeah.
very raw, very inaccurate, not a great passer. You're having a Carson Wentz in there. I believe a Gardner Minshew is trying to make things a little more comfortable, if I'm not mistaken, in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Anthony Richardson being a pick this high and going to Indianapolis out of all places?
He's playing. I don't. He may not start week one, but he's gonna play because Gardner Minshew. All right, we've been there, seen it, been there, done that.
Right.
And then the
Don't
owner,
want to do that again.
Jim Irsay. Jim Irsay is crazy. Okay, and he's gonna want to play this kid because they're gonna want to keep fans engaged. I bet you right now, Indianapolis, that fan base is they're like they're chomping at the
Oh,
bit.
they're saying play AR. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I've seen
so
all the big Colts pages. They're like,
oh,
they are
you
pumped
have
about
to.
Anthony Richardson.
You have to, especially if you can put in that same offensive style that Philly had this year with him and Jonathan. I forgot his name now.
Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan Taylor.
JT.
Man, like he may not be week one. I'm talking about week 4, week 5. He's in there. He's in there. He has to be.
You think Anthony Richardson by week 5 he's starting?
At least week 4 or 5, he's gonna have to be in there because they're gonna have to win games. They're gonna have to try to win that fan base back. Because I think they're one of those teams that I think just had a really tough year. Period.
Yeah.
Like they still got some guys there now. I question some of their offensive firepower. I do like the kid they took out of USC last year, Pittman Jr. But to me, he's not like a true number one wide receiver in my opinion. He's good, but they don't have anyone else on the other side to pair him with, at least not that I can think of. But if they run the system right and you can scheme things, then you might catch the league off guard, right? Because no one really has a lot of tape on this guy. Anthony Richardson only has played like 13 games as a starter.
he's really Trey Lance just 2 years later.
Yeah, that's it. And played at a bigger program. And that's it. So there
Yep.
might not be a lot of tape on him. So you know how the NFL is. We don't know a lot about him. So they might be able to take advantage of that. And then eventually, maybe by then, he's got enough experience. He's been in the system. Then maybe he can flourish a little bit. But I'm excited about the Colts, man. I know it's Indianapolis and it's not like LA or New York, but the Colts have been a steady organization for the most part. I know they've had their bad luck or a bad string of luck, but I'm excited to see what they're going to do.
The Colts. Anthony Richardson is an Indianapolis Colt. He's going to be dealing with Jonathan Taylor, like you said. Alec Pierce, who was a good pick. I feel like last year didn't get a lot of respect. Michael Pittman, of course, who was a solid pick from a couple years ago. Allegedly a good offensive line. Of course, we talk about DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, Simpson Ebukam, Shaq Leonard.
We got some guys. I think they just had a rough year, and that happens to some teams. Because like we were talking about at the top of the show, they were, at least in a lot of people's mind, a top team, a Super Bowl contending team, and then next they couldn't run the football. They couldn't get after the quarterback. They couldn't play defense, and then Jonathan Taylor goes down. Carson Wentz becomes Carson Wentz again, and it was just a mess. And then Frank Reich gets fired in the middle of the season, and then they get some guy. Jeff Saturday comes in and he hires the video production guy to be it was just a bunch of different things that happened. And so maybe they took this offseason to reset, and maybe they'll be better next year.
Right. No, I'm definitely with you on that. And it's going to be just talking about Anthony Richardson here with the Colts. It's going to be nice to see a team that's going to have to venture outside of that build of
Yep.
a CJ Stroud and a Will
Yep.
Levis and a Matt Ryan and everything that we've seen recently. Really fun to watch Shane Steichen mold him, knowing that he had his hands on a Justin Herbert, knowing that he especially had his hands on a Jalen Hurts last year. Jalen Hurts
Yep.
being the one seed, going to the Super Bowl, almost beating Patrick Mahomes, being in the MVP conversation. And as the pick went down, again, Chris Ballard very excited. Chris Ballard said, a while ago, I knew that was going to be the pick, no question about it. And boom, now it's obviously happened, and he's an Indianapolis Colt. But just watching how he's going to actually transform into this role, starting by week 5, that is, I don't even know when to predict when Anthony Richardson could actually start, because if it was week 1, I mean, again, we're looking at Gardner Minshew, Nick
And so,
Foles, and Sam Ehlinger.
yep.
So they've had their run of some quarterbacks lately. Of course, a Carson Wentz in and out of there. Of course, a Matt Ryan in and out of there, which I really hate. And like you were mentioning, them being a roster that was Super Bowl contention. Just a couple years ago, I mean, all of the talent that they had, and it's like they are just a quarterback
Yeah.
away. And it feels like they've gotten away from some of that roster, some of that offensive firepower. The defense was really there for a couple seasons. Now it's moving on. So, watching Anthony Richardson here in Indianapolis is it's going to be a lot of fun, knowing that you've got Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, and CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence all in the same
That's going
division.
to be a fun division to watch from
It
quarterback.
is going to be. You're going to see nice divisional games play out, and ultimately just Steichen really being able to mentor and really make this right. Now let's talk about Will Levis, of course, real quick before we get out of here. We know he became a Tennessee Titan with the second overall pick in the second round of the NFL draft. We both said earlier, but just to kind of stay in the parameters of the segment, what are you thinking about Will Levis to the Titans? I know you said good fit.
I think it's a good fit. I think he's going to be the heir apparent to Ryan Tannehill. I think the Malik Willis thing is that project is done. I think obviously if it wasn't, they wouldn't have taken Will Levis. They would have went somewhere else with that pick. But I think he can come in. Their head coach, he's one of the most underrated head coaches in all national football. Like, and I say that, and he, people do give him praise, but I don't think he gets enough praise. Mike Vrabel is very good at what he does. The way he's been able to, I know they fell short this past season of making the playoffs, but considering what they're up against, you have Ryan Tannehill, you traded AJ Brown away. He still has those guys ready to play for the most part. They're just missing some talent there. But I think Will Levis, will he be the answer? I don't know, because who's he throwing to? Who's he playing with other than Derrick Henry? I mean, so they're going to have to address those issues as far as talent around him. They picked up the offensive lineman last night, so which is a good start. And again,
Yes.
do they get rid of Derrick Henry, or do you have to keep him now to kind of buy some time for Levis to get up to speed? Because if you give Derrick Henry the ball, he's going to get you. I don't know what is yards per carry. It's got to be in the high 3.5, 4 yards. I mean, off the top of my head, it has to be. Um, so can we play on third and short instead of third and long? So things like that can help a young quarterback instead of having to go 3rd and 8. You only got 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. You can
Yep.
pick up those easy first downs. So, but again, I think he's going to the right system because he's going to a good head coach.
Yeah, definitely a solid head coach there in Mike Vrabel. Got a lot of respect for him, and of course, like we said, you look at the quarterback room: Ryan Tannehill, Will Levis, Malik Willis. Running back, obviously Derrick Henry. You got Traylon Burks at the receiver position, and then outside of that, not
That's
many
it.
offensive weapons to really work with. So it is going to be interesting to see what he's actually going to be able to work with. I do like the coach he landed with, though. I really do, because Will Levis, he feels like that Tannehill type of guy. He's a question mark like Malik Willis was when they took him in. And I really like the fact that you said you can't be a team in the NFL to be afraid of taking players over and over again at the same position, because you have to find the right guy that works, especially at the quarterback position.
Yep.
I'll always say it: the best teams in the NFL are built from the inside out.
Yep.
Quarterback trenches, and even before that, you got to make sure the GM and the head coach are right.
Yep.
If you're not attacking those positions correctly, it's just not going to work out. And luckily, speaking of head coach, that they've got a good head coach in Mike Vrabel. That some people have talked about his job, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with that, because I love, again, what Mike Vrabel's done in the NFL, being a former player, being a head coach with the Tennessee Titans, and just really now getting that chance to, I feel like, take his coaching game a little further.
Yeah.
Like, we know what Mike Vrabel is, but if he's able to bring Will Levis in and see that he does or doesn't work, same thing with Malik Willis, and make a decision out of one of these guys, knowing how much of a question mark they were in both NFL drafts back to back. You're taking
Yep.
probably the two biggest question marks. I think Will Levis Call me crazy was a bit of a bigger question mark than Anthony Richardson because Richardson's ceiling was much higher than Will Levis's, and obviously we just know the athlete that AR is. We saw the combine and everything and what he's put on tape. But yes, Mike Vrabel, I think, is now going to get a chance to kind of take that coaching aspect to another level. Continue to become that player's coach, continue to make that transition, or not even transition, but continue to just have that impact on his guys and really being able to grow Will Levis into the player that people thought he was going to be, first overall. We had the Reddit post shooting him up the draft boards. He was
Mhm.
apparently telling people that Carolina was going to take him. A lot of wild stuff with Will Levis in the NFL.